Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 18 of Superannuated Starman. I'm your host, Sean Ryan, and always I am joined by Chris Duerksen
Always.
and Cory Braucks.
Mostly.
On our last show, we covered Maniac Mansion, and to continue with the Halloween theme, we'll be discussing Super Ghouls and Ghosts for the Super Nintendo. This game has some great music, so let's take a very short break so we can cram in as much music in this episode as possible. Developed and published by Capcom, Super Ghouls and Ghosts, known as Super Demon World Village in Japan, released on October 4th, 1991, November 28th in North America, and December 10th in Europe. It is the third game in the Ghost and Goblin series and the first not to be released for the arcade. The first game, which if you ever owned an NES, you probably owned Ghosts and Goblins. Interrupting the history for a second, did either of you ever own the original NES game?
You just said that we probably did, but no, I did not.
Neither of you?
No, I really didn't have a Nintendo that often, so.
Oh, that's a good point. But it seemed like everybody that I knew had this game and knew the struggles that I went through. So when we're
I only
talking
had like
about
12 games.
when we talking about our childhood memories, like I'm gonna bring up some stuff that's just not gonna make any sense to you guys then.
It'll make
Oh,
sense
wow.
to you and the viewer, and that's all that matters.
That's all that matters. Well, the sequel to Ghosts and Goblins, Ghouls and Ghosts, released in the arcades in 1988, but was much more popular on the Sega Genesis / Sega Mega Drive. Super Ghouls and Ghosts was a direct sequel to this game. Every game in the series is a side-scrolling platformer with a heavy emphasis on run-and-gun mechanics in the first two games, but Super Ghouls and Ghosts has a much greater emphasis on platforming than its predecessors. The game has 4 difficulty modes: easy, normal, difficult, and professional. You can change the number of lives you have up to 9, however, you only get 6 continues. The development history of this game was a little troubled. Tetsuya Minami was assigned as a team leader / designer of a 50-member staff just 2 weeks after he finished his duties as the producer on Final Fight. By this time, the project was already underway, however, only the first level of what would eventually be 8 in total was complete. The following 2 years were very turbulent for the team, and the Master ROM was remade several times near the end of the deadline. It worked out though. The game was received favorably, despite its difficulty. As of June 30th, 2017, 1.09 million units of the SNES version were sold since its release in October of 1991. I couldn't find any sales numbers for the other systems this game has been released on, and it has been re-released several times in the last 30 years. This game received a remake that released on the Game Boy Advance, which also had new stages as well as an additional game mode. The GBA version has only been ported to the Wii U. However, the arcade version has been re-released on the PS1, PS2, PSP, Sega Saturn, and the original Xbox. The SNES version was released on the Wii and the Wii U and the new 3DS Virtual Console. It was one of the 21 games available on the Super NES Classic Edition and is most recently available through the Nintendo Switch Online service. With the history of the game out of the way, let's take another break and enjoy some of that music from Super Ghouls and Ghosts. Like many games of this era, it has a very simple story. Our hero, Arthur the Knight, must save Princess Guinevere and the kingdom from Sardius, the Emperor of Evil. Cory, were you able to save Princess Guinevere, or did you allow her to suffer at the hands of the evil Emperor?
We talking like now or previously?
We're
Because
talking back in the day.
no, she suffered, unfortunately.
Well, go ahead and tell me about your childhood memories of this game.
I don't have too many interactions with this game. This was I believe this was one of my friend's titles that he had. I really didn't have too many Nintendo games, but I recall playing this one several times. And the thing that is burned into my brain most of all is the difficulty. And as
For
an adult,
sure.
I can confirm that my childhood memories were accurate. But yeah, I just remember this being a very like hard title, and it's really quite punishing. And the only saving grace in that matter is the fact that you do have lots and lots of continues, so there's plenty of like time to practice. But it's not it doesn't hold your hand, I'll say that much. But
You were a Sega kid growing up. Did you ever play the Sega game in this series?
I did not know. Well, wait, hold on. Which one was that?
There's Ghosts and Goblins for the NES, and for the Sega, it's Ghouls and Ghosts. And for the
I,
Super Nintendo, it's Super Ghouls and
you
Ghosts.
know what? I think we may have rented that at one point.
It's just as hard.
Yeah, I mean, this whole franchise, like, I've played this again as like a teenager, and then, in the last couple of years, I played it because just to kind of skip ahead here, I ended up playing this on the SNES Mini. And when I first purchased that, I actually ended up playing through this, the first couple of stages. And I gave up last time I tried because it's a very hard game. So,
And
um,
I'm not surprised by that because this game is basically known for its difficulty.
yeah, I mean, if you guys recall the Castlevania episode, I was kind of railing on about the difficulty curve of that one. This one makes Castlevania look, pretty tame in comparison, I think.
I'm not gonna lie. I figured you picked this one as payback for the Castlevania.
No, I picked this one because it is a Halloween themed game, and we've already covered Castlevania, so I figured this one would be kind of a fun throwback. And this game is very cartoony, and everything is very,
Fun
bright
and
and
whimsical.
technicolor and
Yeah.
whimsical kind of thing. And it's one of those like spooky, scary skeleton sort of scenarios. So it's a fun title, but it's very punishing, and that is probably what sticks out the most as far as childhood memories go. Is like I don't think any of my friends had beaten this either, and it was one of those titles like where we had kind of just knocking around. And if you ever wanted to just like piss each other off, this was probably the one you broke out and traded off controllers with.
And that's definitely a game that you can do it with because you will die.
No,
So
frequently.
there will be a lot of passing back and forth in that controller. So
What about you?
this is one of those games that I never asked my parents for, but they gave it to me, and I figured that they did it because I played so much of Ghosts and Goblins on on the NES. Because I never asked for it; it just kind of showed up one day. I didn't tell them the reason that I played Ghosts and Goblins so much was because you know how it is as a kid. You only get a handful of games
Yeah.
in its entirety of its console life, so you get one, maybe two a year. So you're gonna play them.
Like, it is very funny how as children we probably played a lot of titles that we would not have played otherwise, just because
Yeah.
like your mom was at the store, and like you were Funko Land or whatever, and it's like, oh yeah, this was on sale and I picked it up for you because it looked cute. And you're just like, Izzy's quest,
Fine.
and you're just like, Izzy's quest for the Olympic rings, yeah, I'll give that a shot. You end up
Got
playing
nothing
it just
better
because
to do.
it's what you have.
Along those lines, I have very distinct memories of receiving an Atari 2600 game. There was a bear on the front of it, and it was a Crystal Castle, I think. And they just gave it to me because of that bear. They thought that it was child friendly. but the game was ridiculously hard and impossible to play.
And you're just like, this is not for kids.
But love them. They did their best.
I mean,
So,
like my mom was actually pretty good about. Like, well, okay, so my biggest memories about stuff like this, I'm derailing,
go
but
ahead.
during the PlayStation era, we had so many like imports from Japan and games of that nature. I just remember getting like all kinds of weird games in that time frame because it was sort of the wild west of programming, and like Walmart would have these bins, and it was just these like $5 titles, and it was like imports from Japan or like weird, you know, indie games and things of that nature. And I remember like my mother would bring home like, Jade Cocoon or like Herc's Adventures or Toomba, and there's just these weird games, and it's like these are
Tuma's really good.
oh yeah, Toomba's really good. So is Herc's Adventures. Like it's a LucasArts title, but like I don't know how many people know that Herc's Adventures exists. It's just one of those like
Yeah.
it's just one of those weird obscure titles, and I think the fact that like our parents just were like, yeah, this is really cheap. I'll buy this to entertain my kids for a couple hours.
And it worked because I spent not I spent a lot of time on this game, but I also owned A Link to the Past. So if I had to decide where my gaming time was going, it was going to A Link to the Past.
Right.
But I can remember holding the box in my hand and thinking that the box art looked really, really cool as a kid. And I may be getting ahead of myself, but have you guys looked at the box art recently?
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
I
I
have not.
I put it up in the Discord, so mute yourself and take a second to look at it while I describe it. The very first thing I notice is that Arthur's right arm is twisted at this really weird angle with the sword almost directly behind his head. Obviously, Arthur is the focal point of the artwork, and that's where the time went because if you look anywhere else, it doesn't have that high level of detail that his armor got. Instead, you have these weird looking goblins to his right with deformed heads, and over his shoulder, you have the two shambling zombies that look pretty similar to how they do in the game, but the level of detail is just not there at all. It's just a very weird box art when you really look at it. My history with this game isn't very extensive, like I said, because a lot of that time that I had, it was going to go to A Link to the Past because that's probably my favorite SNES game and one of my favorite games of all time. But even as a kid, I can remember the slowdown while playing this game. And
Yeah.
I didn't think about, FPS until years later when I started getting into PC gaming, but the slowdown was so noticeable that it makes the game almost unplayable in parts. And I never got far due to its difficulty. I think the furthest I ever made it was the third stage, and that's a maybe, but I never beat it as a kid. I do have some vague memories of playing it on ZSNES, one of the emulators for Super Nintendo, but even then I don't think I beat it. And if I did, I used cheats for sure because I don't there's no way. There's no way that I beat that game when I was younger.
If it makes you feel any better, there are no cheats. Like I tried looking it up. I'm like, how can I get through this game? I tried looking up cheats. There's a level select, but like all the cheats involve having a second controller. So
Yeah, I was just about to mention the level select code. So in the options menu, go to exit and hold L and R plus start on controller 2 and press start on controller 1. A new menu will appear where you can choose your starting level or play any of the game's music and sound effects. But Chris is right. That's it as far as cheats go.
Gotta get you a game genie, baby.
I never owned a Game Genie for the Super Nintendo. I had one for the regular Nintendo though.
I had a
To
Game
get-
Shark for the Genesis, so
Mm.
I had a friend that had a game genie, and I remember like going over and like Mega Man, like they throw on game genie for Mega Man, and Mega Man like jumping super high and like auto blasting. Like, did game genie work on this?
well, if it had a programming for it, assuming.
Oh, okay. So it's
Like
not.
Yeah,
the thing is that like they had to like make the code to do stuff. So
Yeah, I
So-
don't know exactly how that works.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
so game genie doesn't work on every game, and it doesn't just like
I have
don't know.
no idea. I'm you know
Yeah.
I think I'm gonna look into that. I'm sure there's some YouTube video out there that explains everything. But we're talking about Super Ghouls and Ghosts. Chris, what are some of your memories with this game?
I had a babysitter that I used to go to after school every day that had this game, and I tried to play it a lot because it was cool. Like I don't know what 8-year-old doesn't think a knight in shining armor or in boxer shorts killing zombies is cool. But yeah, this was one of those games that I kind of remember playing it often and never getting past the first level. And this was definitely one of those games where you throw it on for 10 minutes, test the waters, and then shut it off and switch to something else just because it was so hard as a kid. And
Yeah.
and like you said, like when I got my Super Nintendo Mini, thank you. This is actually one of the first titles I loaded back up because like it's just the box art for it is super recognizable. It's I don't know, it's just one of those titles that always stuck in my mind. Like everybody knows what Super Ghouls and Ghosts is, right? So and I mean and it's also carried a lot of respect. I don't know. It's got a good legacy to it, I guess you could say. So it was one of those.
Franchise.
Yeah, it's very recognizable, very memorable. It's one of the games. Like I said, it was like one of the first titles I booted up when I got the SNES Mini, and like Cory said, like I fire it up, try to get through the first level. I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot how hard this is, and I'm done. Like, and I will admit, like I've gone through, I don't know, I've had a SNES Mini for over right about a year now. But also like, and even like when I had an emulator back in high school and stuff, like I don't know, this is one of those games that I always just kept coming back to, but just never made any progress for it. And in the past, yeah, the furthest I ever got was the Ghost Ship level 2. Um, and it's so funny because like even looking back on it, I remember like the graveyard part. I remember that so clearly. Like I'm like, oh, it's such a cool little nostalgia trip going back to the first level, and then it's a brand new game after that because I never made that far because it's such a hard game.
We'll save that part for the next segment where we talk about revisiting the game today.
For sure. Yeah, but yes, but as far as a kid and even as a young adult, yeah, this was a super challenging game, but it always had I don't know, I thought the graphics were great when I was a kid, and um great soundtrack. It was a very appealing game, but it was also just harder than anything else I had. So I never made it far as a kid.
And that's not surprising. So I got a follow up to my earlier question about whether or not you guys had played the NES or Sega games. Have either of you played the Maximo series? This came out on the PlayStation 2. The first game was called Maximo Ghosts to Glory.
No.
No.
I believe I actually have played a few of them.
Okay, so it's a
Name's
3D
familiar at least.
it's a 3D hack and slash platformer based on the Ghosts and Goblins universe. It has essentially the same design. You run around and kill the undead. If you're hit, you lose your armor. If you're hit again, you die. The game even saw a sequel called Maximo versus the Army of Zen. Now, I did own that game for PlayStation 2, the first one, not the second. And it's basically a 3D version of Ghosts and Goblins.
That actually sounds kind of cool.
Okay.
Was it
yeah,
also
so
equally as hard?
I
Oh,
just
yes.
booted it up like on the Google webs here. I definitely have played this.
Yeah, it's hard as hell, but it's still a lot of fun. And if you ever get the chance to try it out, I definitely recommend it just because it kind of shows what that game could be in the 3D space.
That'd be neat.
Now that we've finished recounting our memories of Super Ghouls and Ghosts, we're going to take a break. And when we return, we're going to dive into our thoughts of replaying this game in 2022. Stick around. So Corey, how did you replay Super Ghouls and Ghosts today?
I played it on the Super Nintendo.
Like the actual Super Nintendo?
No, the SNES Mini.
Ah, okay, the classic edition.
Yes, the remake for the limited run console.
So how was that? Was that exactly how you remembered it as a kid, or was it different?
It certainly looks the same. There's not nearly as much slowdown because I can definitely agree with you that as a kid, if you had more than like 4 characters on the screen, things were getting real choppy real fast. It definitely ran a little better with the updated hardware. So it was a lot of fun. It was definitely playing this as an adult and running through it again. I am surprised that as a kid, 4 controllers were not broken. And I think it's the fact that I didn't own this directly that probably saved a lot of Nintendo controllers because it was very frustrating. it's, it's a really hard game.
Frustrating is probably a great way to describe it. And I still own a physical copy of this game, but unfortunately it's in storage. However, I do own a Super NES Classic Edition, and that's how I played it. But I still felt that the slowdown was terrible. So I went to romhacking.net to look for any ROM hacks of this game, and they have a Super Ghouls and Ghosts restoration hack. So some of the changes include the onks you see in the graveyard on the coffins. They're changed back to the crosses that were in the original Japanese version, as well as changing some of the names of the final bosses. Those things are nice, but the major reason why I went looking for a hack was a slowdown fix, which this patch also does.
Oh, that must have been nice.
Yeah, I mean, I could definitely see the need for that. Like I said, it's in comparison to playing it as a child, I don't think it was nearly as bad, but it definitely still has that issue. The frames tend to drop pretty significantly when you have multiple people on screen. But
And
I definitely remember it being like much worse as a kid.
I never got to those stages as a kid, but some of the environmental effects just had to tank the
Oh
system
my
back in the
gosh,
day.
yeah.
Yeah.
So Corey,
So how about how much did you enjoy getting through the first level and dealing with all that garbage just to get drowned by a murder wave? How did you enjoy that?
yeah, that is one of the points that I want to bring up because I didn't remember that part at all.
Yeah, I didn't either. And I finally got through the graveyard and I was like, "All right, we're good." And then you get on this little like bridge thing and then you get a big like tsunami wave coming and it kills you and you have to be on high ground, which is like one of 3 spots to survive. So that was a lot of fun to get through that after the first like 20 minutes to just immediately get murdered.
Yeah, I only remember that because I actually replayed this, well, I don't know, less than 6 months ago.
So because I'm the only one that played the SN or the I keep saying that. I'm the only one that played the NES game. To me, this captures my memories of the original title almost perfectly, and it creates this almost HD version of it, compared to the 8-bit NES. And I played it on normal, but I did select the 9 lives option in the menu. And
Yeah, okay, so hold on, before you go any further, Chris, did you select the nine eyes option on the menu?
Of course, dude.
Okay,
Okay,
because you were
so
you were
you,
notorious for not going into menus, so I just had to
I
make
know
sure
every
that you
I
were
was
time.
gonna.
not
Okay, so
insane.
you already gave me crap about this one for not going to the menu because I in Discord I was like, wait, you can select how you can. There's difficulty selections on this, and that's when you guys were giving me grief about not going to the menu again. But yeah, after I figured out that you could, I actually read online. I didn't even I wasn't just like checking it out and stumbling around and found the menu. No, I went online because it was when I was looking for cheats or whatever. Like I'm like, man, like there's got to be something to make this easier. And yeah,
Yeah,
that's
because I
when
was
I
gonna
read
say
online.
if you put yourself through this with only like the 4 lives or whatever the standard
Dude, that's what
thing
I was
is,
doing for like the
like
first
no,
week.
that's
Oh no.
lunacy. Like Jesus.
Was it the first week? The first few days, at least. The first few days, I was playing it on normal with normal, and as soon as I found that out, I started over. Yeah, I started over with 9 lives on easy mode, and even on easy. Oh, sorry, I'm getting ahead here. Even on easy.
That's fine. It's fine. Corey, did you play on easy too?
Yeah, I ended up I played on whatever the normal difficulty is for a little while, and I got to like the 3rd level, I think it is, with the fire, and I was just like, this is a
That is
trial.
exactly where I got. I got to the 3rd level, or actually, I might have. Yeah, I think it was the 3rd level, and I was like, nope.
I was like, this is just too much, and so I ratcheted everything way down, and I was like, all right, let's do this again. We got to get this finished.
So what else in that first level really stuck out to you?
The first level, I mean, it's it's kind of a fun, campy thing. And here's the thing. This game is entertaining, and it does not play particularly well. Like there's we have already discussed, like, there's frame rate issues, and getting like Arthur's jumps down is really like one of the biggest trials of the whole game, really.
Because you can't change directions in the air.
Yeah, and when it's just like, it's such a timing thing where it's like, oh, if you screw up, you're just gonna crash. Especially like with the fact that everybody throws projectiles and like is in your way constantly. If you screw up your jump, like, more often than not, you're crashing into something. But other than that, other than the fact that like it plays a little wonky and it's unnecessarily difficult because of the fact that it plays wonky, it's this kind of fun, campy first level where you're running through this graveyard and the terrain is constantly going up and down, and like you get Zambers popping out from every which way, and it's fun. It's cartoon and colorful, and
For everyone out there, when he says Zambers, he's talking about zombies.
Yes. So, it's very fun. And I think I do like the fact that it is very reminiscent of Castlevania, because like you're essentially kind of doing the same thing where it's like, okay, you've got the undead and you've got like this, creepy haunted place, and then it even does the whole thing where you come up to an area and there's bars, and you can, switch from the foreground to the background, and now suddenly you're in the background and you're kind of running around behind the scenes and fighting monsters, and everything else in the foreground can't hit you anymore. So there is that like forced perspective and depth change that's really cool too. But
Can we back up just a second, and can you explain to everybody some of the movement mechanics? So you talked about his jumping briefly, but can you kind of dive into that?
Yeah, so one of the key elements of this game is the fact that Arthur can double jump.
Which is my favorite thing in games.
Yeah, so like, you hit jump once and then he goes in the air, and then, if you hit the jump button again, he jumps again from the position that you jumped from. So if you jump in the air and at the height of your jump, you double jump, you can go twice as high basically. But you can also immediately double tap jump and go just a little bit higher than normal, or depending on where you hit the button, that edits your distance basically. So there's a lot of platforming in this game, and the fact that the terrain is changing quite frequently, especially in this first level, really affects, like your play style, and basically you are forced to kind of deal with this ever-changing environment, and it's very difficult, and it's just really punishing, the fact that like you're constantly having to go up and down and dodge things, and there's projectiles flying from every which way,
and can I also add the fact that like there's the columns that you have to jump over that you can't walk through, but the zombies can walk through them.
Yeah, there's just a lot
that bugs me.
like
that. And if you are right next to any of those columns and jump up and try to land on top of it, you can't
jump over it. Yeah.
You have to like back up so that you can get an arc to your jump. And to add a little bit to what you were talking about, Corey, with the mechanics here, that with that double jump, if you were to jump to the left and decide that you're about to fall into lava or whatever, you can make your double jump go in the opposite direction
Oh,
and jump
yes, there you go,
backwards
yeah.
towards the right.
Yeah, that is the
And-
only time you can change the direction while you're in the air is on the double jump.
Yes, and while you're jumping, you can also face left to right to fire your projectiles. So
Yeah.
it sounds good in theory, but in practice, it's a little clunky in my opinion.
Now, speaking, you're talking about like the ROM hacks. Could you imagine a version of this game where you could control your jump like as if you were playing Mario?
Like
Like
air
I think,
control.
yeah, I think this game would be 10 times easier.
Yeah, but so would a ton of those other games from the past, like any of the classic Vania games.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think that. I mean, that would definitely kill the difficulty level on this
I
game.
mean, part of the reason some of these games are so difficult is because the controls are so
Kind of like
limited.
like
Yeah.
Resident Evil 1.
Oh, with the tank controls. That game is unplayable. The PlayStation version, unplayable today.
But that was one of the conversations about that game is the fact that like the controls are so bad for it is what made the game as scary as it was because the controls are so bad, and then all of a sudden when you have a zombie jump out at you and you're fumbling with the controls because like it's kind of like one of those nightmares where you're trying to run away from the monsters and you're like all of a sudden you're in quicksand and can't run away or something, you know?
I don't know. I've never had those kind of dreams.
Oh, well,
But
you're
no, I
lucky.
get you, Chris. It's basically the fact that you were unable to react in a timely manner, so
Yeah.
it becomes this terrifying thing where you just can't do anything about it.
Mm-hmm.
So back to the level, like Cory was saying, after you complete the graveyard, it shifts to this kind of craggy beach area where there's several stone pillars. And if you're not standing on one of those, a giant wave washes over you and it's insta death. And you have to deal with that like two more
Three
times, I
times.
think. Three
Yeah.
times total. But
Yeah, this
after
game
you
is not
complete that,
forgiving. Like it's if you are not on that pillar when the wave comes, there is no trying to swim. There's no trying. You can't even be in the air heading towards that pillar. If you get caught when that wave comes, you're screwed.
but after you get through that, we have the first boss, which I don't know the boss's names except for some of them later on, but the boss was really, really easy.
Compared, yeah, it was kind of wasn't Castlevania kind of the same way where like the levels were the punishing part, and then when you finally get to the boss, you're like, oh, good, finally, like
Yeah,
easy mode.
Yeah, I'd
it's-
agree. What weapon did you guys typically use throughout your playthrough?
Either the dagger or the bow as much as possible.
Ditto.
The bow. Are you talking about the bow? It fires like two
Or
shots,
the
like at an
arrow,
angle.
yeah. Like so, especially when you get your armor upgrade,
It's
it becomes
tracking
like a
arrows.
yeah, it's like a heat seeker.
Really?
So
Yes.
Oh. So
Yeah, the
I
bow-
used. Go ahead.
Oh no, I was gonna say the bow becomes really handy once. I mean, and we are also sorry. I'm going back a step because we're talking about the mechanics, the movement mechanics. You cannot aim up or down in this game. You can only aim horizontally.
Side to side.
Yeah. So the bow is one of the few weapons that gives you an angle to your projectiles because when you first get the bow, like without, with normal armor, Arthur, it's two projectiles, right? Right, Cory?
yeah, it's two arrows. One
Yeah.
of them goes at a slightly upward, and one of them is like a 45-degree angle or 90-degree angle upward. So
So it was at least a way to shoot things on angles. And there's and as you come to find out, there's lots of flying enemies in this game. So the bow is super handy. But then once you get your final suit of armor and you get your weapons take on a magical property, the bow has 3 projectiles and they're all heat seeking, which is really nice. I mean, and it's not just heat
Oh,
seeking
that
like a
would have
little
been
bit.
real nice.
They actually loop around.
yeah,
Like if they miss a target, they will spin back around and come back.
yeah, they're like homing missiles. They're great.
Oh,
So
go ahead.
throughout the level, some of the enemies will have these pots on their backs or on top of their heads, and after you kill the enemy, the pot will break. And sometimes there'll be just little power ups that are for your score, which after you get a certain score, it adds another life. Pretty normal video game thing. But some of those pots will also have different weapon pickups, and some of the weapons we've already mentioned a couple of them. you start off by default with the lance, which is kind of slow, large projectile that only goes in a horizontal, plane. You have the bow, which we just talked about, the dagger, which is much smaller than the lance, but you can fire rapidly.
Yes, that is probably the nicest thing about it is you can just shotgun
Yeah.
these things out.
And for the record, that was that was my go-to. Once I discovered the dagger, well, actually, once I discovered the magic dagger, I stopped switching to anything else.
Well, the last one, if there's more, I can't think of it, but the last one I
There's
can
a
think of
scythe.
is the torch.
Well, there's
And
a
a torch
there's
and
a
an axe.
there's a
Oh
throwing
yeah, the axe and the
There's a-
sickle. Yeah, there are
yeah.
more.
There's a throwing axe, a sickle, and the flaming torch. And I think
And that's
this,
another. I was
Go
just gonna say
ahead.
that's another way this game is punishing because there are definitely bad weapons.
Well, the
Well, and
torch is straight trash.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and so I was gonna say this is like that classic Castlevania problem I had where if you're
Hmm.
not being careful and you're like, you mentioned that guys will just drop weapons periodically. Well, if you're not careful and you're killing zombies or whatever, like right in front of you, and they drop a power up, you end up picking up a power up that you don't want. And it's just like,
True.
damn it, now I have to use this stupid like flaming torch thing instead of
Or the stupid axe.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like it was either the axe or the sickle. When you get your armor, is not too bad because it becomes like a boomerang essentially, where you can throw it, and it's just
I
like
think
this
the sickle
spinning.
is
The
the
sickle.
boomerang.
The sickle? Yeah, okay. Yeah, it becomes this just spinning death wheel that you can throw in front of you.
But it's
which is
still
not
so
terrible.
slow.
Well, yeah, it's slow, but it's
You can
it's
only
not
throw
as
one at a
bad.
time.
It's not as bad as like the torch, though.
So, in addition to those power ups, there will sometimes be chests that appear. And inside the chest, Chris mentioned you can have armor upgrades. So, you have your standard armor, and then it's a blue or green. I'm having a hard
Green.
time remembering.
I'll
Green.
call it green.
And then you have
Seafoam
a
green.
third upgrade, which is your golden armor. After
Which
that, you can upgrade to 2 additional shields that will tank a projectile for you.
now, as far as I can tell, like, was there any? Did the green armor do anything? Or, I mean, because if you still get hit in the green armor, you don't go back to the silver armor. You still go down. You in any armor
Yeah,
that
that
you're
was
in,
that
when you
was one
get
of the
hit,
things that
you go
sucked.
naked.
Yeah,
And
there's no downward progression to power ups like Super Mario Brothers.
yeah, and in this, when you get the green armor, you're like, oh, maybe like I was thinking like
Your
maybe my
weapons do
weapons.
upgrade. They do.
Do they? Okay, I
Mhm.
wasn't sure
They do.
if they do or
Yeah,
not.
because if you're naked, the torch is like a crappy
Oh,
it's
gotcha.
like a handle, so it's just like you're throwing like a stick. And then when you get the green armor, it becomes like this little fire that like when it hits the ground, the flaming projectile like
Goes
lasts
a little bit
longer.
further. It goes over 3 squares instead of 2
Well,
or
and
something.
it spreads out further and it lasts
Right.
longer, so people can like walk into it and take damage versus like the initial explosions. The only thing that matters.
See, and that's actually why I kind of like the torch in some certain. Like if I was stuck with the torch,
Right, it's such a pain in the ass to use because it's just this
Yes.
cheap like it's this low arc and you have to like kind of guesstimate where it's gonna hit and it's not good in my opinion.
I mean, like seriously, like once you get the dagger, there are no other good weapons.
No, yeah, I mean the dagger's really nice and I personally was a fan of the arrows, but the
I was using the
lance
arrows, but there's so many enemies on the screen at a time, especially the magic arrows, because those magic arrows will keep flying around until they hit something.
yeah, so
And
you
as long
can't
as they're
shoot
flying
again,
around,
yeah.
that means you can't shoot anymore. And if they're taking their time
Oh.
hitting an enemy, you are stuck watching this arrow just fly around the screen while
That
the
is
enemy
one
is
of the
coming
biggest
right at you.
drawbacks.
Whereas with a dagger, you just I'm sorry, you just let her rip.
So we got way off topic. So we covered the first level, and after that first level, it kind of transitions into this water pirate ship kind of aesthetic.
And I couldn't tell. Like at first, I thought like, are we underwater, or
Oh,
is
you're
it just like
on
a
ghost
murky?
fleet.
Yeah, I don't think we're underwater. There's no bubbles or anything.
No, yeah, you're not
But
underwater. You're like you're running around like a bunch of ghost ships.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think it's like a shipwreck cove or something like that.
It's where we beat up all the pirates and put those.
This is the stage I think that introduces you to the mimic chests.
Yes.
Yes.
where I described that there's chests before that can have power-ups such as armor upgrades or weapon or a shield, some of them will have this kind of dorky looking magician, and he will shoot a blast at you, and if it hits you, it turns you into a girl, and
Well,
you can't attack.
You become a baby.
A baby?
Yeah.
No, in my version, you're a little girl in a cute little dress.
No,
Yeah.
it's like a little
You're like an
baby.
8-year-old. You look like Lil Bo Peep.
Yeah. What are you talking? A baby?
You like crawling around on the ground?
Oh my gosh, no, not at all.
Yeah, you're a baby.
No,
No,
sir.
in mine, you're a little Bo Peep in a little blue and white dress, and the only thing you can do is jump.
Yeah.
And you can only jump like half as high. It's not even like full jump. You can barely jump over enemies. And you have to time it perfectly.
A baby. That aside, I thought that the aesthetic to this level, it just looks amazing. The attention to detail with the limited color palette that they have and just 16-bit graphics, it looks so
They
good.
make the best out of it. It still looks good, even. Yeah, sorry. But hey,
And the music ties in really well.
Speaking of the mimic chests, can we mention the other mimic chest that's, I believe, also shows up in this level? The one that has like the little
Little
pink
ghost. Yeah.
Yeah, like it's almost like an oyster, like like a little pink glob in there, like pokes out and shoots at you.
So if you don't kill it right away, well, excuse me, if you can kill it, but if you don't continue attacking and destroy the chest, more of them will come out of it.
See, I thought I couldn't figure out the mechanics. I thought like you could only kill it once it opens the chest to shoot at you, and basically you had to kill it before it kills you. Otherwise, like when the chest is closed, that chest can just tank any number of hits indefinitely until it peaks out, and then you actually have to hit the soft spot inside of it.
Yes.
Okay.
I didn't explain it very well.
So there's 2 mimic chests that are introduced in this level.
Pause. I need you guys to go look at Boss Slayer and tell me that's not a baby.
What are you talking about?
Wait,
Go,
did you
go to
put it in Discord?
Yeah, go to the Boss Slayer and tell me.
Did you put it in the Gen Chat Discord where everybody can see it?
I said the Boss Slayer. And you tell me that's not a baby.
So right now I'm looking at
that is a baby.
Something completely different than what I saw. And in the photo that Cory just uploaded, it is a literal baby.
It is a baby in a bonnet, walking around, crawling on all fours.
Yeah, that turns you into a baby.
Can you jump as a baby?
Yes, you can jump as a baby, but you're crawling like you're a baby.
Okay, so in the version Sean and I were playing, you are a little Bo Peep looking.
I wonder
if I had to guess, young girl.
I wonder if he has different spells because.
No, because I tested. Well, I mean, at least in my game, I was thinking the same thing. I tested out over and over. I wanted to see. I'm like, do I change anything else? What happens? Like, what happens if I stay? Like, how long do I stay a girl? Like, I played around with it. Like, it is just, at least in our version, the only one I ever saw was a girl.
Same.
I became a small baby.
Crazy. Well, do you guys have anything else for level 2?
What's the deal with the boss in level 2? Like, what is, like, was it a bunch of barnacles together?
Like a giant evil barnacle.
Yeah. I had the first boss in the first level, big cartoony vulture. I get it. Yes. Vulture graveyard. I understand.
And
this boss,
eggs at you.
Yeah, you look like it's like an alien barnacle monster that like chases you down.
I don't know, man.
But also, I would like to add this boss equally just as easy as the previous boss.
Yeah, he was not difficult at all. Well, moving on to level 3, outside of that tidal wave, this is the first real bullshit moment for me. And that's as you're descending the level, which actually, time out on that thought. Most of the levels are just this left to right horizontal platforming, but now you have some verticality where you have to descend into the level, and you do that. And you do that by taking these ladders. Yes.
Okay. And the way I describe this level in my notes is it is a lava sewer.
That's a great way to put it. And as you're descending, there's these enemies, and they're called Gririans. That's Gririans. Gririans.
Silly name.
And well, all these names are silly, and they kind of look like a bear made out of fire, and they breathe fire.
Oh yeah, okay, those dudes suck.
I thought they were like big rat bears.
regardless of what they are, there's some type of monster. And they can breathe fire either straight out in front of you or at an upwards angle. And what makes them so cheap,
Through the floor.
exactly, it's like you're reading my mind. They can go through the platform that you're standing on and hit you. But obviously you can't fall through it, so you can't move faster. So
And
in
unlike
addition
Mega
to
Man,
that,
you can't shoot while you're on the ladders either.
yeah,
Yeah, there's very little recourse for saving your life as far as a lot of this goes.
you have to
And you
like
can't.
lure them to one side and then rush to the other side and quickly climb down the ladder and kill them.
Yeah, and in this game, one of the few games I can't think of any other game where ladders are involved. You can't jump and catch a ladder in the air. You have to start at the bottom and climb up it, and the entire time you're climbing, you are completely defenseless. And you can't jump off the ladder either. Like if you need to like hurry and escape, you either have to climb up it, climb down it, and you are stuck on that ladder. There are like no other options.
And after you get through all of that, there's this lava lake where some pillars will appear out of the lava.
That
And
you
this
don't
is
know
some
about until you
really,
jump.
really tight platforming. And
Yes.
the pillars will disappear if you wait too long.
Yeah, I found that out. Yeah, and pretty much like this is where it was all new territory for me.
Yeah, so this was giving me real like Super Mario Maker trauma. Like some sort of like teenager with way too much free time designed this to make me hate myself. So
Yeah, I thought the exact same thing because there's one of them that I think the second or the third pillar, it doesn't appear until yours is just about to disappear, and and since you can't correct yourself in the air during a jump, you have to get that jump perfect or otherwise like that's it.
well, it's a real like frame issue, I think, where if you're not far enough forward on the screen, like it won't function properly. And if you're not standing on the very edge of the pillar that you're currently on, like sometimes it just doesn't want to load.
Yeah, I definitely think that there's some screen transition issues. And I said that very poorly. Screen transition issues where you're talking about that if you are not far enough forward, the game doesn't have any like flags to start the next activity.
Gotcha. That could have been it because there are times where I was on that one pillar and I swear, like as soon as I jumped off it, it disappeared from underneath
It
my
would like
feet.
register and it would pop up in front of you. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
But after you get through that lake,
that lake killed a lot of my lives and continues.
yeah.
Pretty sure that lake took like an entire like 9 lives from me. I had to
Oh
use
no, I can guarantee. I mean that lake alone was a restart spot for me several times where like I had to start fresh over new game after that spot. And that was on easy mode. Like with the platforming stuff, like I'm assuming on easy mode, like there's less dudes, but the platforming's the same.
the
Like
difficulty curve is static as far as jumping goes, which is a very big portion of this game.
yeah.
And then we run into my old nemesis, the Red Armor. So he's that red devil that will kind of swoop down at you.
The red gargoyle, yeah.
In the NES game, in Ghosts and Goblins, that's like the first enemy that you really encounter. And that's like the stopping point. And he's like 2 minutes into the game. So when I finally ran into this guy, I was having just,
Flashbacks.
8-bit PTSD all over again.
And this guy is where the arrows came in super handy. And
I didn't even
even
think of that. That would have been a really good option.
yeah, and even the axe with the little arc into it because the daggers carried me through the entire game, but for this one particular enemy, like shooting in a straight line in front of you is so hard to kill this guy if your only option is to just shoot straight in front of you in a straight line.
Who's the
And I
boss
swear-
for this section?
Let me
I
check
don't know,
my
you
notes. I
get-
don't know if I wrote
Get
down.
to the
Is it the worm looking
castle,
thing?
right?
Yeah, you have a tower section.
Yeah, and there's like
And-
the big purple worm dude at the end, right?
That's what it is. This like worm like creature. So I just stood on the pillar like closest to it inside
And
its
just let it
loop.
circle around you.
Yeah.
And this
there was no
this
challenge.
boss was the first time where I used my superpowers where I like when you get the gold armor, you can cast magic spells. And by the way, like getting the gold armor does make a huge difference in this game because not only does it power up your weapons, but it lets you cast magic spells, which as far as I can tell, you can just cast as many as you want. And they give
There's a
you tons
charge
of.
up period, I think, is the only.
There's a
thing.
charge up period,
Yeah.
but I mean, like,
Yeah.
there's no set number of casts. Like, you don't have to find ammo for your magic spell. And your magic spell, at least the only time I ever had it was when I had the dagger, was it sends this dragon that basically just clears the frame of the screen for me and makes me invincible the entire time the dragon's flying around. So this boss, I just spam my magic spell, and it's like I didn't even realize I had magic spells until this boss.
So let's move on to level 4. And in my notes, I have the words "wow" written just huge. I loved this stage, and I think that's because it reminds me so much of Castlevania 4 with the rotating level. And
I hated this stage.
Is this the weird
Really?
beige, like chupacabra looking thing?
Yeah, the
What?
cage where like this is the level where you have to jump onto the platform, otherwise it all turns to spikes.
Yeah, it's like the big beige, gross room that turns
Yeah.
into like the red murder walls. Yeah, okay.
Yes. And everything becomes spikes and it
Yeah.
kills you. And oh, did we mention like remember this reminded me every time I died this way, it reminded me of you, Cory, during Castlevania. You're talking about how like enemies whenever you get hit with anything, you get knocked back and then well, in this game, you get knocked back like 5 feet. And while you're getting knocked back, you can't double jump or anything. You just have to wait to land on your feet and then try to jump again, which in the murder room, you're screwed. Like when everything gets covered in spikes, you are toast.
I'm gonna say right now, if you beat this as a kid, like high five, man, because
Yes.
this game sucks. I mean, like it doesn't suck, but it's just it's not.
it's so brutal.
Yeah, it's very punishing.
As an adult, if you beat this as a game, kudos to you. If you go back, if you listen to this episode and you never play this game and you go back and beat it and you are determined to beat it, you'll have my forever undying respect.
It's a very challenging game.
Yeah.
And I think what I liked about this level so much, in addition to that part reminding me of Castlevania, when you get to the second area, the level continues to shift, but it doesn't rotate. The entire level just kind of tilts up and down in this really disorienting way.
Yes,
Feels a
super.
little
The first time I
nauseous.
got hit with that, I was just like, huh. I'm not even kidding. Like I was playing it, and I was just like, oh, I don't like this. Like they did a really good shaky camera in on that level.
I just
And
thought the whole
also,
experience was really unique.
so in the last level we talked about the red devils. Can we talk about the blue genies in this one that spawn
Yeah.
in the wall, and you can't shoot them until they get
Axe-wielding
out of it?
assholes.
Yeah, and they and then and while you're stuck in this rotating little cocoon, they are still coming towards you, and you're trying to shoot them, but your projectiles don't come anywhere next to them, and then you get out, and they're right there, and they kill you.
Yeah, those are definitely some difficult enemies to deal with, but once you get kind of the timing down and kind of moving left to right, you can kind of draw them out of the level basically.
I spent a lot of time just baiting enemies out so I can kill them. But then there's one of them. I don't know, like after like the first switch or the second switch, like when I say switch, I mean like stage rotation. There's a never-ending supply of genies. You kill one, and then another one comes from the exact same spot. And I got to the point where I like, okay, kill this genie, and then just start running so it gets
Yeah,
off the
you just have
screen.
to keep moving because
Yeah.
it doesn't want you to be there anymore.
Yep.
Well, after that platform ride, at the very end, you transition to a new area where you have a boss fight with this Hydra. I just spammed the knife, and he was dead in literally seconds.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
fighting Tiamat, and he just needs like 80 daggers, and you're done.
And I'm not sure if it actually makes a difference now, but there are several times where all three heads line up together, and you're just blasting all three of them. And so yeah, all three heads just die super quick. But that floating platform thing is also some crazy BS because those little pink geysers that shoot you while you're trying to fly over them, but then the tiny little mini genies that pop up and like come at you like a freaking wasp. Like, oof, this game is challenging.
And instead of the orange spheroids, you got the blue spheroids now.
They were green on mine.
So all of that brings us to the end of level 4. Let's go ahead and take a break because we still have half the game to discuss. So when we come back, we're going to start off with level 5, the ice stage. Welcome back. So when we left off, we had just beaten the boss of level 4. That was the Hydra. Now we're moving into level 5. This is the ice stage. There's this rain effect that comes across the screen, and it reminds me a lot of Donkey Kong Country with its usage of atmospheric effects.
Totally. I didn't even put that together until you said that, but now that you said that, totally.
And all in all, I thought this is probably the easiest stage outside of the graveyard.
I was thinking, dude, get out of my brain. I was thinking the exact same thing. Like this was my breather spot when I finally got here.
Yeah, because you didn't have to like get continuously murdered by like holes in the ground.
Now I will admit, I am the first time I got to the stage. So there's these little, I thought it was a bridge, the little spiky ice parts that connect one cliff to another. I was like, oh, that's a cool little ice
walked
bridge.
into them?
I walked into it right away.
Very
first time I got there, I died. I was like,
I'm with Cory on this. They clearly look dangerous.
Yeah, I know. And literally everything else, everything in this game is out to kill you. And especially anything that's pointy or spiky at all will deal damage. And I was an idiot and just walked right onto it. And not only does it kill you, but it also doesn't cause it to break and I fall through. But I learned my lesson on the in the first 10 steps of this level.
I mean, this one's really straightforward. It's like you're kind of climbing this icy
Mountain.
tree-looking mountain, and you're just kind of going upwards. And then instead of the fire bears, we have ice bears now, and you have these like annoying flower pillars.
And instead of the flower, it's the same thing as the skull things, but instead of having a tidal wave of doom, you've got an avalanche, which I actually thought was kind of cool because it took me a minute to realize, oh, if you just climb down on that ladder that goes to nowhere, you can hang onto the ladder.
The major difference here is that it
doesn't kill you.
The avalanche, exactly, it doesn't kill you.
It just takes you back to the starting point of the avalanches, which I thought I like that just because the fact that was this was the one forgiving part of the game that I appreciate and thank them for, because at this point of the game, you are far enough into it, you are invested into it. Had that been an avalanche of doom where just touching the avalanche screws you over,
I probably would have broken a controller.
I was gonna say that would have been a controller chucking moment. So I appreciate the fact that they cut some slack on this one.
What's the boss on this level?
I don't even have it written down. It just says the boss was easy too. That's all I wrote.
It's isn't it like an Iceman?
That's what it is. It's this kind of creature that I think breaks in half, and you fight his upper torso.
Okay, yeah, he's not memorable at all.
Not at all.
It's just like some sort of big ice monster. I think it was very cut and dry.
So level 5, there's not really a whole lot to talk about. Level 6, this is the castle stage, and it starts off with 3 of those red armors. And if I had had the bow like you guys are talking about, they probably would have been a lot easier, but I used the knife almost exclusively. So trying to bait them into climbing down or flying down so that I could attack him. It took a lot of my time, and we haven't even mentioned yet. In addition to how difficult this game is, there's a timer on the level.
Which luckily I never hit the timer. Did either of you guys?
No,
I was aware of
didn't.
it. I cut it close sometimes, but I never wanted to find out what happened.
Yeah,
Like,
I definitely got close, and that was stressful enough. There's no need for
And
a timer. The game is already so
Yeah,
hard.
I think it's just an extra level of like we hate
Stress.
you and stop playing.
Yeah, because really, I mean, pretty much everywhere in this game, if you stand still too long, something's coming after you. So this game naturally keeps you moving towards the end anyways. There is no need for the timer because you're like I never cut it closer than I don't know. I'd say I probably finished every level with at least 45 seconds to spare.
Yeah, and I mean it's like a 5-minute timer too, so it's not like it's pushing you to go fast. Like you have ample time to get through these levels.
That's true.
But it's just this thing like ticking in the background that's just like, hey,
Why?
if you
Yeah.
if you stop to like take note of your surroundings, we will punish you for it.
So into level 6, after you beat those 3 red armors, there's a section where they just change the rules and they make these platforms that you cannot jump through. It's an easy section, but I was just annoyed that every other platform you can jump upwards through.
Yeah, and this one you have to jump around. You have to
You have
double
to jump
around it.
around.
Yeah.
And then you have this boss fight. And the boss
Who
fight,
looks like an angry Muppet.
yeah, his name is Nebaroth. And this hulking
I swear you're
creature.
making all this crap up.
I'm not. Just go to the wiki. It's all there. So this boss has a face in his stomach that will breathe fire at you. And his head, he will shoot out laser beams that can go at a 45-degree
Angles.
angle up or down, or just straight out and ahead of him. When you beat him, and spoiler alert for anybody that's interested in playing the game, after you beat him, you get a cutscene where Princess Guinevere appears and tells you that you need the goddess bracelet. At this point, you're sent to the very first
No.
stage of the game. Yeah.
Wait, is this the final boss already?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, one of the final bosses, because I scratch that because you fight this boss 2 times.
Yeah, I was gonna say. Well, I mean, technically 4 times, right?
True. So, you beat him by himself, and then you fight him again where he has a second phase.
Right, and it's not till the second phase. No, I mean, it's not till you
You're
fight him
right.
the second
You're
time
right.
where we get the message. This time
Yeah,
you just
I
beat
messed
him.
up.
Yeah.
So my bad. Chris is right. So you fight him the first time, you kill him, no big deal. And then later on in the game, you fight him again where he has a second phase where it's the exact same enemy, essentially. He's just stronger.
Then he eventually like turns green, doesn't he?
But
He does.
But after in this particular fight, it's fairly easy, fairly short fight too. All the boss fights have that common thread where they're all pretty short and easy. Especially if you have dagger and you can just spam them, hit them in the face a whole lot, and then you catch the key, and then you move on to the next stage, which I don't know what the name for this one. I just remember this. The next stage was super platformy.
Yeah, for sure.
The next stage was the one where tons of ladders, tons of narrow ledges that you have to jump onto, tons of bird heads that are were those bird heads were those just the heads and the necks from the first boss?
It was just the boss's head that was
So
done to...
which I thought that was a clever, good use of recycling there. Typically, it's kind of lame when games recycle bosses as enemies, but this was literally just wall decoration.
Would be lame if I had to fight the boss in the middle, but it was literally just like
just
part
just
of
the
the
head.
boss as a monster. So it wasn't like I had to do the whole mechanic thing again.
But this level had some very good platforming.
I agree.
And one nice thing that I also appreciate about this level that cuts to your break, unlike Castlevania, is that if you miss your jump, you're not guaranteed to die. Like if you fall off the screen, I don't know, the screen travels with you. You know what I mean? Like, remember in Castlevania, one of my complaints was that, like, if you jump off a ledge, even though you know there's a platform underneath you,
yeah, you just die.
You die. Your screen does not travel with you. Yeah. All of a sudden, like anything that's not on the screen is a void. Whereas this, you can actually fall, and it's obnoxious because you have to climb do all the jumping and ladders again, but you're not dead. And the enemies don't respawn, which is nice.
This is the section that I kind of jumped the gun earlier. You have to defeat that boss in his first and second phase, and then Princess Guinevere appears and tells you that you cannot even see the final boss. You have to
Yeah.
go back and retrieve the goddess bracelet.
So yeah, and
And
because after this boss is where you fight the same dude again and again,
you have to go through
right?
the entire game.
Yep.
Right. But I mean, but
Yeah.
like after the platforming stage, that's when you
Yes,
fight.
yes, it's
the
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
animal.
it's the guy again, round 2. It's Mr.
Right.
Muppet round 2, basically. So
Exactly. I don't know if you have any experience with these other games, but Ghosts and Goblins and Ghouls and Ghosts, it's the exact same principle. Once you get to the end boss, they make you start at the very beginning of the game and you have to beat it again
you'd
to get the
think
good
Arthur
ending.
would learn by
Mm.
now.
Yeah,
I wouldn't
this
say
is
this
his
is the
third
ending
time.
because this is where I got to. This is where I got in this game, and I wouldn't even say that's like it doesn't even feel like, oh, I beat the first playthrough. It doesn't feel like that because like it's not like Dark Souls where you play it and, oh, do you want to start a new game? Like you beat this boss and you're like, oh, it's the final boss, and she literally says,
It's
hey,
literally like the princess is in another castle type of
yeah,
situation.
exactly. Hey, could you go pick up this bracelet? I hid it on my way here. Like
Then you have to go back to stage one, and you go
right
through
back
the
to the
entire
beginning.
thing again.
And here is where I check out of the conversation. That is literally as far as I progressed. I did not. So I am curious.
You said
I've been waiting
screw
to
it.
ask you guys, where's the break? No, I died, and that was it. Like,
I did decide to go ahead and finish it, but I started using save states because this is garbage. I shouldn't have to play the same game 2 times consecutively just to see the final boss.
where's the hidden bracelet though?
To answer your question, Chris, you would need to be wearing the golden armor and find a chest that would normally have a weapon in it. And once you open it, you'll see this fairy creature flying around you, and you're given a super weapon.
That's what you're looking for. Ah,
Yep. And then you get the magic laser shotgun out of it,
so
basically.
so the bracelet can literally, it's not actually hidden in one spot. It's hidden where as soon as you meet the qualifications to get it, it pops up.
Correct.
That's evil.
Yeah, it's so painful. And worse, there's no charge for that weapon either. So, like all the other weapons where you can charge it up, like you were talking about earlier, you cannot do this with the goddess bracelet.
Yeah, you basically you get this. It's like a Hadouken, basically,
Yeah.
and it's a pretty good weapon because I think it does just like one shot everything, but it's just a forward projectile. So
But it's a big fat one though, right?
well,
It's not like
yeah,
Yeah.
it's like half the size of Arthur's body, so it's pretty sizable. But it's just this forward projectile, and it's all you get, and you have no sort of special gimmick to it. It's just your laser beam, and that's all it does. So you just kind of have to mow down everyone in front of you and hope that you're like constantly moving forward and nothing's coming from the side or from up top or anything like that.
and you have to get through now can you lose the laser, like what happens if you die? Do you keep the fairy weapon or do you have to earn it again?
So I don't know because I abuse
Yeah,
save states
I
on this second
also
playthrough.
Fair enough.
I also just cheesed my way through it. So
And I don't feel guilty about it. I
no,
played
yeah,
through the
because
game.
it's
I
bush league.
beat the
Like you
game.
shouldn't have
We
to do
gave
the
our
whole
we
thing again.
and come on, and to be fair here, we gave ourselves 2 weeks to beat this game. Good for you to getting through it however you need to get through it. Like,
Well, like if this did this to me as a child, number one, I probably wouldn't have figured out like I had to have the golden armor to find the fairy or where I would have had to
it would have just
get I would have
happened
had to
because it
get like
happened.
a copy of Game Informer or something to figure that out.
Now I will
But
admit, I mean, like the gold armor, like once you, because I assume we all replayed that graveyard level enough times where we all got the golden armor halfway through that
well,
level
sure, but
every time.
it's so dumb to be like, yeah, you have to have the gold armor and you have to, play through the entire game again. And like if they had done that to me, I would have just been like, I'm not doing this. I'm 9 years old. I'm gonna go play kickball or something. This sucks.
So
Just
the like, and I will admit the whole reason I knew about the fairy is because after going through this, like I was watching a speed run, and I mentioned this to you guys in Discord, but I wanted to mention it for the podcast. This game is so frustrating because what was taking me days of playing to get to these places, I was watching a speedrunner. He beats the first playthrough, the first run through, the first half of what you want to call it. He gets he gets to the boss and gets the message saying, "Oh, you have to redo it." He gets there in 15 minutes, and it's taking me hours.
Counter argument to that guy spent 47
right.
real-time days
No,
of his life.
I'm just
like,
yeah. No, I'm like, it's just little.
yeah,
It was
it's
just
like
a little bit more.
theoretically you could do it in 20 minutes,
Yeah.
but like, do you have the exact button timing to do that? Like, that's the problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's probably one of 2 or 3 games that he plays, and that's it.
Yeah,
Just,
ever. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, so we're kind of going around and around, but the thing that sucks is like you get this weapon, you have to play through the entire game again, and so you have to go through all the BS of like jumping through the lava and going up the ice level and dealing with all the crap in the castle, and then finally you get to the end and you just fight this giant statue man and he shoots lasers out of his butt at you and he's a jerk.
Oh
He's
yeah.
like a big golden armored like vampire looking dude.
Yeah, and he summons these platforms that you have to jump
and you have
onto.
to ride on platforms to shoot him in his stupid face.
Whereas if you had the
shuffles
magical
back and forth.
If you would have had that magical arrow, you could have just shot him from the ground.
If I had a
but
cooler
instead,
weapon,
you're stuck,
I could have just
but
killed
instead
him.
you're stuck with Fairy Fist.
What's a pain about this guy is that the platforms that he spits out of his stomach, his top head will fire lasers in a circular pattern in a 360 degrees. And there are some patterns that you cannot ride the platforms. You have to be very specific with which ones you get on.
It kind of baits you into getting yourself killed if you. And the other thing that sucks is that every time he shoots his stupid mouth off, you end up getting slowdown because he's got 14 projectiles coming out of his head.
Yeah, that's
so like the frame rate just drops to garbage.
But eventually, your efforts are paid off. You kill him, and you rescue the princess, and you get this cinematic scene where she rushes up to you,
magic bubble,
and she gives you a kiss and thanks you for rescuing her.
The end.
The end, and that's Super Ghouls and Ghosts. So if you guys don't have anything, you got some. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say we pretty much complained this whole time. What did you guys actually like about it?
Well, let's cover that in the next section.
Oh, okay. Music break?
Yeah, let's have a music break. Welcome back, everyone. This is our final segment, which means it's time for our final thoughts. But first, one last note. In November of 1991, Volume 30 of Nintendo Power, on page 87, it has ratings for several NES and SNES games of that current time period, and it just so happens that one of those games is Super Ghouls and Ghosts. But before I go into the rating that they gave this game, I need to talk about their scoring system. So they have a key at the bottom. They call it the listing key. And I'm going to read this off verbatim. You can get the most out of our game listing by understanding the categories. Company and game type are self-explanatory. Use this key to understand play info and valuable power meter ratings. I butchered that. I'm really sorry, guys. So the power meeting that they mention is the pros at Nintendo HQ rate each game. Ratings are based from 1 poor to 5 excellent in 4 areas. Those areas are graphics and sound, play control, challenge, theme, and fun, With that in mind, they gave Super Ghouls and Ghosts a 4.8 in graphics and sound, which I agree, pretty phenomenal game. 3.7 in play control, only a 3.9 in challenge. If you look up at the rest of the score, they gave the same score of challenge to Hal's Hole in One Golf.
And they listed Final Fantasy 2 as more challenging.
Yeah, you're telling
Which
me that a golf game is more challenging than Super Ghouls and Ghosts? Get out of here.
and
No.
Final Fantasy 2, which great game, but I mean that is a grind fest. That is not. There's no timing involved. There's no spiky pits. There's no monsters chasing you
It's
through
literally
walls.
strategy and composition and time spent. There's
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Back to this last segment. Cory, you were the one that suggested this game, so I'd like to hear you go first with your final thoughts on the game.
My final thoughts about Super Ghost. I think that summarizes it.
Really?
No, no,
I had a lot of
no,
fun
no.
with it.
No, I mean, yeah, it was fun. It was campy. The graphics are nice looking, and the music is really fun. You know, everything's got sort of a, like I said, it's like a very spooky, scary skeleton type of thing where everything's jumping around and shooting at you, and it's a fun thing, but it's just so it the time spent is not rewarded, I guess. Like, you know, I don't know about you, but I probably spent like upwards of 5 hours getting through this, and I did not
That's it?
feel well, like at least, right? Like, but like I spent a solid amount of time on this, and I think that for the time I spent in it, I did not feel accomplished. Like, especially after you get through the whole game and you deal with all the garbage that it puts you through, and then it's like, hey, you got to go back to square one and get my stupid magic jewelry and then play the whole game again. Like, it was just kind of like a big screw you, you know? Like, and I think it's fun. I think it's campy and it's, entertaining and everything, but it's not something I would recommend to other people. Like, if you're looking for a challenging game, like Castlevania 4, as much as I complained about that game, like is way better polished than this, and it runs better and it feels better, and the boss fights are cooler. A lot of the bosses were basically just like it's a guy that
Hit me in
spits
the
crap
face.
at you and you just
Yeah.
punch him repeatedly. Like you don't even have to dodge anything for the most part.
I feel like you're stealing all of my thoughts.
Well, go ahead. You wrap it up. Tell me what you are thinking of.
So I have like 5 major points that I want to make. And to me, I did enjoy it. I enjoyed my first trip through this game, but as I got closer and closer to the final stage, I was just filled with dread knowing that the NES title Ghosts and Goblins had some shenanigans about it all being a dream or something like that, and having to replay the entire game just to see the true ending. So as I got closer to the end, I was liking it less and less and less. That said, the individual levels, even though they're not very long, they are challenging, and that means you're going to be spending a lot of time in each of them. And as much of a punishment as that sounds, the music is great and the levels are so detailed and varied that it's a real visual treat. And
I
almost
couldn't
every
agree with you more. Yeah.
yeah, in almost every episode I mention just this game's soundtrack. And this has one of the best soundtracks on the SNES, hands down. Even the bosses had their own unique theme, and I thought that was a great touch.
Yeah, I mean, composition, they really did put a lot of effort into this. And just kind of touching on the levels again, these levels are incredibly short. And I think it just kind of speaks to the difficulty of this game because if you were invincible and you could sprint through these levels, they are 60-second endeavors. You can see the whole map in a very, very short time frame. And I think the fact that like the game gives you 5 minutes and we're all talking about like cutting it that close is just kind of an example of just how hard this game is because it takes 4 times as long to get the level as if you could run straight through just because of like all the crap that's put in your way. So it's pretty painful.
All in all, I like this game, but I'm done with it. There are other titles that we talked about maybe returning to in the future. This is not one of them.
Yeah, this I can leave this one in the past. I don't think this is anything particularly groundbreaking or inspiring. And I mean, it is kind of like a cult classic. It's popped up in other places, and it's been re-released several times, and I think it's got a lot of value as far as like history and everything. But it's punishing. It's punishing, and it's not fun to play.
Chris, bring us home. What are your final thoughts on this game?
So I wanted to like this game more than I actually do, and that's because of the legacy this game has and the reputation, the cult classicness of this game. I went into this game wanting to like it, and I was super excited to play it because, and it also fits Halloween October. Sorry about the creaking. Fits Halloween and October so perfectly. I was excited, and because it was just, this is one of those games that I've been punished with since childhood, so I was looking forward to an excuse to, I was determined to beat it, and I did enjoy the challenge of it for a bit. I didn't realize how short those levels are now that you pointed out, because I will admit I died so many times on these levels where they feel much longer than what they really are. But yeah, if I would have had an invincibility star, yeah, you're right. Yeah, these are super short levels, which I suppose, thank God they're not longer because they are so hard.
Oh my God. Yeah.
But I wasn't going to mention this, but yeah, I mean, like I got through, I beat the final boss the first time, and then my game bugged out, and I was happy to call it quits there. Like I feel kind of bad that I didn't beat it all the way through, because I with all these games that we do together, with the exception of Shining Force, I try to beat them.
Boo.
Yeah, I try to beat them before we
Yeah,
record.
ladies and gentlemen, we are 2 months after the Shining Force episode, and Chris still has not finished it. So
If not longer.
Yeah,
just wanted
I
to put
forgot.
that out there.
I forgot. Like I said, I was going to pick it up and keep going along with it, and that lasted like 2 weeks before we started playing something
I'm
else.
just giving you grief, but I did think that was funny.
Yeah, but this game I did not beat to the end. Now I do love the variety of the levels, because there are no bad levels, there are no ugly levels, there are no, most games always have like one dud section. This game, I don't feel like it had any like that. There are more challenging sections than the others. I mean, they're all challenging, but they're all pretty, they're all cool, and good variety. I love the artwork. I mean, like I wish there was more zombies rather than just the first stage, because, it would have been more Halloweeny. But this game is so goddamn hard. Like I'm not going to refer anybody to play this game unless I'm want to punish you. Like, this is a punishing game that I will never try to get Gibson to play this game. Like, and I feel bad saying that, because it's such a I don't know. Would you guys consider this a legendary game? I kind of would.
Yeah,
It pops up everywhere.
I don't know if I consider it's definitely got a background, but I don't know if it's just because it's kind of like it's old, I think it's
Yeah.
something that survived, and I think
And
that people have enough like good memories of it that they are willing to consider it to be one of those, like, 100 games from Nintendo or whatever. But I don't think it's necessarily like super impressive.
yeah,
Just how we kind of covered Star Fox, and like the first Star Fox is very fun, but it is just like this super short title and didn't have anything like spectacular about it. And
yeah,
I think this is just kind of the same way.
yeah. But I mean, as far as like the graphics and everything, like the characters, the sprites and everything, I thought it still holds up. I mean,
Visually, it is
yeah.
beautiful. I will say that. Like,
This is
really
a great looking retro game. But yeah, I mean, like I said, I would not recommend this to my kid, and that means something more to me than it probably means to anybody else. But yeah, the fact that I'm not going to recommend a game.
Yeah, the fact that you won't share it with a loved one, I think, speaks kind of volumes about the quality
that
of
is the
it.
best way. That is the best way of putting it. Yeah.
Well, those are all great thoughts. And I think that's going to wrap up the show right there. guys, thank you for torturing yourselves and playing through this game. Cory, thanks for the suggestion. This is a great game, but like I said, I think I'm all done. I think I'm all done.
Oh man, I wish so badly. Like if there was a version where the jump controls were a little bit better, I would love to replay this game, polished up and better controlled.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know if that'll make a huge difference in my opinion of it if it played a little better, but it was fun. It was certainly something that was popular for its time, and it was kind of a big deal. But there, as far as titles that kind of look like this or whatever, there's just much better that you can do.
And the only reason I say I would like to replay it if it was fixed, basically, is because I mean I do like the level designs. I like the atmospheres. I like the
Sure.
I like the generic cheesy story of it. Like you know,
Yeah, who
but
doesn't want to be King Arthur and like throw lances at a good time? But
yeah,
I mean, like I said, this is kind of a different version of Castlevania in a lot of ways, and
I
I
think
think
it's
that
way harder.
yeah, well, it's way harder, but I think as far as gameplay goes, like it's sort of the same deal where you have multiple different kinds of weapons and multiple power ups and sort of things like that, and it's a lot of platforming, and I think like Castlevania just does it way better. So
Yeah,
like if I had to recommend one over the other as far as like
definitely Castlevania.
what kind of like vampire spooky type game would you say like here play this, like I would pick Castlevania anytime, and that's coming from someone that did not have a great time with Castlevania.
So the next episode is going to be Castlevania 3, right?
Oh sure, yeah.
Not quite. For those of you out there, if you're not following me on Twitter, please do so at ReviewByte. That's review BYTE. There's also kind of a Twitter adjacent that's been set up. It's called cohost.org. That's co host host.org. And I'm at Bite Sized Review. That's BYTE Sized Review. You can find us on iHeartRadio, where you have these episodes posted on YouTube. We have our Discord server, which we always talk about. But our next game is going to be Donkey Kong Country 2 for the Super Nintendo. And everyone, it hasn't been many, but I have gotten emails about why I won't, quote, allow women on the show. I've only had one guest.
What?
Her name was Sabrina. She's coming back. It's been almost exactly a year since that episode. That was episode 1, Donkey Kong Country 1. And we published that on October 4th of 2021. So she's coming back just a little more than a year later. I don't hate women. I want more women on the show. If you
We just happen to repel them. That's all.
Sean,
Yeah.
why don't you allow women to be on the show?
I have asked so many people, so many women that I know that play games. I'm like,
if you are
please play.
If you are a female listener and you have a title you want to talk about, come interview to be on the show. And if you're funny,
You don't even have to interview. We'll just say
no,
yes.
I don't. Well, listen, I don't want to pick fights with someone the whole. If you think that you would have a good time, you come to the Discord and tell us you want to talk about a game, and we'll see if we can. Hey, how about that?
That's a great way to put it. So, everyone out there, thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed your time. This episode was a little longer than I expected it to be. So,
It flew by.
Oh,
it
sure,
did.
sure.
It flew by pretty quickly.
What a great listen. I can't wait to listen to it again.
Here is the outro music. Go ahead and enjoy that. Thank you so much, and we will catch you next time.